Hello, everyone. So good to be here with y'all today for our 27th episode of A Girl Like Me Live, which is a live interactive series that we do here at the Well Project, where we feature different women from the community to talk about issues that impact our health and well being. I am so honored to be here today with Kim Canady and who is one of our community advisory board members. And I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourself further.
Um, hey everyone, my name is Kim Canady. I'm a community advisory board member. Um, Born positive, so that's 36 years. Almost forgot how old I was. um, been advocate, activist, especially specializing in reproductive health, sexual pleasure. Um, yeah, just all around the way, girl. Talk about HIV and sex.
I love that. So we are here today to talk about, our She Her They programming, some different things that we've been doing in the community. And for those of you who don't know, I'll remind you, She Her They. It is sexual health education, HIV empowerment resources, and treating HIV equally. That is one of our programs. It's a multifaceted educational outreach initiative focusing on improving engagement and health outcomes, care, and well being for women living with HIV while promoting a culture of wellness through a holistic and non stigmatizing lens. So that's a lot of words to say what we are going to break down today very eloquently, I'm sure, through our different poster presentations and different conversations with community that have been happening over the past few months. So, first, your involvement with She Heard They, it has been phenomenal in the impact that we've been able to see in different environments. That poster, no, it wasn't a poster. You presented back in, I forget what month it was, but in Houston.
August.
It was
Hot.
August.
It was hot. It
Okay,
was August. I will not forget.
okay,
I
talk.
almost died from the heat.
Okay, and it was Houston.
Yeah.
Which conference?
So I got asked to go present with Olivia Ford on the Let's Talk About Sex conference. It was amazing. I think for me it was one of the I've been to different conferences before and after, but I would say for my reintroduction back into conference mode, because there's a mode that you get into for conferences. That was one of the best that I can go into, where it's women, people who identify as women, and from Black and Brown, um, Indigenous women, all coming together, our allies coming together, and just talking about different things that encompasses reproductive justice, health. At that time, the abortion ban just came out with Roe versus Wade, so it was heavy on that topic. But just to have community come together, no bras, titties just flapping, like us just being women, having that conversation, just walking through different convention doors. It was an amazing space to be in.
Oh, so that sounds like a cool space to be in. Like, let's talk about sex. Did you did you get to talk about sex?
I did. That was the best part. So So I was able to present with Olivia on she, her, they. Well, the Let's Talk About Sex abstract that we had, and it was from the back. It was from what happened at the WRI previously the year before, and it was really about talking about reproductive health and how we can intro. I can't get my words together.
Interrogate
Yes, I couldn't get it out today. I don't know what's going on.
a list.
You said
Inter-
what?
Intergate is going to go on the list.
It's going to go on the list of good words. Um, Integrate reproductive health, sexual pleasure into HIV when we're talking to doctors. Um, Sexual pleasure is something that is never really discussed, if it is, when it comes to providers, when it comes to going to the doctor. It's us as women, we talk about it together for the most part, but it's not a normalized conversation. So how can we make sexual pleasure a highlight and talk about that and the importance of not just going for a routine checkup, but actually talking about, are we enjoying sex? What does that look like? And having the doctor or the provider being the one that's being able to ask that questions, but also us to guide that conversation. So it was refreshing to be in a space where we didn't really promote us being there because you had to go through an app for people to pick different workshops, and it was a lot of workshops. It was me thinking like, I want to go to these workshops, but I'm presenting,
Hmm.
and just to have about 15 people in our room and them staying after just to engage and have more conversations was an amazing experience to have.
That sounds decent, but I keep getting distracted by your hoodie. I just keep seeing something. It look like masturbation. Oh,
Masturbation. Oh wait, this mirror image.
no, I see it
Masturbation.
right. Tequila
Okay.
wings in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Because these are important. So
Cool.
this is, yeah.
All right. So thank you for wearing it today so appropriately for our HIV women and sexual pleasure episode. I think it's really interesting when you say and being able to share space with so many other people who get it. Like pleasure does not come up in the conversation often, and I don't know even know if at the age of 35 that I know what pleasure truly is and what that means and how my HIV diagnosis has impacted how I feel or feel that I deserve pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Are those types of things that you were able to get in there, or was that more of that the presentation that we did in Puerto Rico at the USCHA?
So I think that the Let's Talk About Sex was the icebreaker um for Puerto Rico. So it was like a soft landing of coming in, of just introducing what sex and pleasure could look like. But really talking about the provider aspect of asking more questions, us knowing what questions we want to ask, but how to integrate that into a conversation was more, let's talk about sex. Puerto Rico at the USCHA conference, that was completely different. The panel discussion, I feel, with me, you, Araya, Portia, um, us four different women coming from different perspectives of where we are as people who are living with HIV or working in the field, our experiences just as women, period, and in talking about what sex looks like. Um, the comments popping up is distracting. But that was completely different because it was like what they call kitchen table talk. All of us coming together and just vibing out off of each other, on top of the fact that it was hot outside and freezing inside, and 3 out of 4 of us not having any voice, but to have the room so packed where people were sitting down on the floor and could not get into the room, and then stayed after, not just to ask questions but to hear more of us talking, and then coming to us to have this conversation, and just to hear the feedback of people talking about what sexual pleasure looks like for them, or just sex looks like for them. We don't talk about sex, we don't normalize sex, period. And to have an open space like that where you have different women with unique voices, it's amazing. I keep saying amazing, but I really like talking about making the uncomfortable comfortable. So I
The
think that's
irony
why.
of the uniqueness of our voices when no one had one, as Heather just said, like, and how loud and powerful they still were in a room. So that was a workshop that we completed, that we did, as Kim said, in at the US conference on HIV and AIDS back in October. That was phenomenal. I saw in the comments that the Let's Talk About Sex was actually in Dallas. I wanted to
Oh,
correct
it was
that.
hot.
But
Sorry.
wherever it was hot.
My hair burned. That's how it, no, seriously, like it was so hot that I didn't realize, coming from New York in the summertime and then going to, it's not important, but it was a factor for me where I know protective hairstyle. My hair literally was burning off. That's how hot it was. Like I can, it was breaking from the heat. It was hot. But I would go back though.
I'm so glad that the conference was so amazing, though. And then that y'all were able to, vamp that energy up, ramp it up for Puerto Rico because that conversation was phenomenal. I wouldn't have a better way to describe it than a kitchen table talk. Like, um, sitting on a panel with other women who are living with HIV, the experiences being so vast. So
Hmm.
you had, two of you who were born with HIV, one woman of trans experience, and then me, a cisgender woman who contracted it later on in life. Those experiences and how just as women, pleasure doesn't come up. And then when you intersect that with HIV,
Hmm.
coming to the realization or those aha moments that, oh wow, like what is pleasure actually and what is sexual health, and I can take some power back with that. Like there are questions that I can ask a provider. Like this conversation can be initiated there because for a lot of us, the people that are looking inside of our bodies, like that seems like it should be the most. We are at a very vulnerable spot. So why aren't these conversations coming up? I think sometimes for providers it can be hard. As I just saw a comment just come up, even in the community, just talking about sex, like you have to have a code word for it.
Mm.
I wonder, what drives those things? Why, if we can't talk about sex, how are we even going to be able to begin talking about pleasure?
So I think defining what, so it's a compacted question, but because it's one is what do you define as sex? And I think that most people have different understanding of what sex looks like or sex acts or things that intertwine with sex. So I think for us as black and brown women, and I'll speak for myself. I grew up in a really religious household. We wasn't talking about sex. We wasn't talking about touching your bodies. It was talked about don't let nobody else touch your body. So to have that from where I live and then to go into look at everybody else's home life, what is normalized around women, us being over sexualized just in history, and then us as women not coming together fully to have these conversations and then expect somebody else as a provider who was like, I got 20 minutes to make sure you're okay with your medication, make sure that you're good moving forward for the next 4 to 6 months. That's not a priority to them because it's not a normal conversation of when it comes to health or even with HIV. So to ask them and expect them to be open, it's hard because a lot of them is just stuck in. I don't want to say stuck in their ways, but it's like stuck in the regimen that they were conditioned to do, just like we were. So to expect us to have this conversation or expect them to have that conversation, it's going to take some work because even just saying the word sex is hard. And then think of pleasure when a lot of us don't even have a pleasurable life. Like pleasure isn't something that we put into our everyday life, especially as women, because a lot of us has to get up, get the kids up. You have to go to work, go to school, clean up, go get grocery shopping. Nothing about that is pleasurable. So to even think of what we want and what we need just in society, period, why would we equate that to a healthy sex life or a pleasurable sex life at that? So that factor sometimes your needs because I think of it in my busy, crazy life that I do a lot for other people. So to think of pleasure sometimes is a hard concept to do. And I think that a lot of women relate to that, or a lot of people relate to that, that pleasure is an afterthought. So now it's trying to put that in your forefront of making that an everyday situation is I need to enjoy, I need to enjoy.
Yes. I want to go back to that comment. Okay, we could sit here. Such a great point to put it, Kim. Talking about pleasure even outside of our sex lives. Yes, I agree with that. And then Bridget was saying how people have a hard time differentiating sex and sexuality.
Mm,
Yes, I would say that that is true. And trying to like go back to my community and explain these concepts, because there are a lot of misconceptions or a lot of misunderstandings that are there. Sometimes it's a little frustrating because, you have to be willing to have those conversations so that we
Mm-hmm.
move forward. And sometimes those are not the easiest conversations to have. So I appreciate safe spaces, spaces where I can come and be vulnerable and say I don't understand, and then get that knowledge and go back to my community so I can, you help me, I help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the next comment said, but the Well Project said 1000% on all of this. Yes, yes. After that workshop in Puerto Rico at USCHA, it was, first of all, the room was packed. I don't know how the room was able to be packed at so early in the morning. It
It
was one of the
was
first sessions.
early.
It was miserably cold, but, to keep pointing those things out is to say that there's a great interest in this conversation. And one of the most memorable points I
Mm-hmm.
had was when it was a white gay male who approached the panel afterwards. And he came up and he said, I understand that I'm not a black woman, but so many of these points hit home for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of maybe like sexual trauma, which had impacted us earlier in life, which made many of us in that room that day, because we got claps and everything, to feel like they couldn't or shouldn't
Yeah.
experience pleasure, or the reasons why we're having sex. Like, is it even from the initiation of it, is it designed to be pleasurable for me or for the other person,
Mm-hmm.
persons who are engaged in that act? And taking back that power, um that
Or
was
even
phenomenal.
or even in the exhibit hall, um, we're just winding down, going back to our tables, and the older white woman who lives down south, who clearly you could there's a difference between me, you, and her, just coming and relating and starts to cry. And we're both there like somebody cries next to me, I get uncomfortable, but to fight the uncomfort is something that I'm working through, because I felt what she was saying of how much she can relate to us on all the topics that we were talking about, and how she was going to bring that back to her organization and to talk to the people that's around her about what we was talking about, and how to make that important, to highlight that. I think was one of the takeaways that I took, was that we are reaching not just people of color, that this is a topic that is around everybody, like not just us, but everyone. And to see that in the room, but also see them approaching us outside, was an overpowering, overwhelming feeling, but a good overpowering, overwhelming feeling.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember crying too. That
Mm-hmm.
it was, I mean, you wouldn't even think that tears would be coming from talking about like sexual pleasure, HIV and women, but it felt like such a big weight lifted off. Like, oh, other people are experiencing this too, or
Yeah.
people have suggestions. Try this, address this. So that was awesome. Ebony has said that she loves that we have the opportunity within each other to discuss pleasure and seeking joy through sexual pleasure. I think that was what the rest of the comments said. Um, yeah, it's so important. It is so very important. So at a community conference, but then we got the opportunity to go to the international workshop on HIV and women. Kind of a different audience. We had there was a different presentation of the information as well. We did a poster this time. You presented
Mm-hmm.
a poster. What was that experience like?
That experience was different. Um, so this one was in Seattle, Washington, which Seattle is very rainy. I knew from Grey's Anatomy, but I didn't know how rainy it was. It was nonstop raining. I'm y'all gonna like Kim really likes the weather, but these weathers have factors. Okay, so it was cold. Um, it was very provider based. It was researchers. At that moment, of me going, well, me accepting to go felt a little at odds because in my head, I don't see myself as a researcher. I just see myself as a regular person who's doing the work and sometimes forget that we all have different hats. So in my head, it was that self doubt that I don't belong here. I don't even look like the people that should be in the room. But then understanding and psyching myself up, um, it was one of those things where I was like, wait, I am a researcher because I find a topic or I'm presenting a topic. I'm doing the extra. I'm researching. I'm looking the stuff up. I'm putting the stuff down. Like we don't give ourselves these titles that we deserve. We just call ourselves. We minimize our impact to the world, or we minimize the work that we do. And I can say that for me, that changed the narrative in my head to think about how I show up and how I want to show up, just in my work. And now I'm in my head like I'm a researcher, so that was amazing. Might not be a doctor, but I'm a researcher though. That's on the end of it. Um, so presenting that, I never did a guided tour. I never did a presentation. I never presented a poster. I've always been doing workshops and presentations. So it was a lot of prep work of asking everybody else whoever did a poster tour, but to do a guided poster tour was a different experience of we sat in a room with a collective of like maybe 100 or so providers, social workers, doctors, researchers, women in the field, people who just wanted to learn and watch different people present on their abstracts and their findings. And then by the end of the day, because it was a really long day, by the end of the day, after sitting in this one room, so it's not like conferences where you go to different places, one room all day, which was a lot. But we got to sneak off and take a break and then come back. So that was amazing. But they had all our posters out in the front. So when you walked inside the room, you could just view the posters here and there. And then to go in the next room at like the end of the day, and you have 15 minutes to present your poster, and people just ask you questions about what your poster is about, and you're selling basically your concept, like your hypothesis of like, this is what I came up with, this is what's happening, this is my research, and this is what our organization is doing. And to see that even though all of us had different ideas or different things, some was talking about hepatitis, HPV, breastfeeding, what that looks like in different regions, and to see me, which was one of the only people that was talking about sex and pleasure and the importance of it. And then just in that small little cluster of people talking about, I wish my doctor would ask me how sex was. I wish we could normalize this conversation, and then morph into another conversation about being moms, or you know the being, it's tiring being a mom, the everyday mundane life, but then also, how do you even talk about pleasure period to people? So like just to have this poster morph into a a mini kitchen table talk of us, like supposed to be 5 to 10 minutes just presenting and talking, and I felt it was one of the most engaging guided poster tours. Just everybody else's was cool, but I think mine was engaging. Not to toot my own horn, but it was pretty dope just to have like a real conversation on all the heavy research that was there, and it was something that was, if we can do that more often, where we use the research but then also make it relatable to people, so we can have this conversation, because so many times we go to these conferences and don't understand what they're talking about, and you're just like, oh, okay, and then move on to the next one. But to have somebody break it down in a sense of like, nah, this is something that we all need to talk about, and this is why it's important, this is why we need to normalize this conversation, and this is why you should start having at least one conversation, one question, like to bring to your client, or how to change up just the form of the intake form, or just to not put it all on STIs or HIV, and just to break that into a conversation that doesn't feel uncomfortable, and then to have that around different providers and people talking about that,
from all around the world. Like
all around the world. It was people
it
from
was
Africa,
an international conference.
Africa, Australia, and all of us were just talking about like relating to the same thing, and to see that's a common goal. Like I think after that day, I was like, I could do this anywhere. Okay.
Yeah, that was powerful. Ebony said, "Yep, you stood out when talking about sex, and it was powerful to see." I definitely agree with that sentiment.
Oh, thank you, Ebony.
Teresa's in here. She says her mission to free the people one person at a time.
Hmm.
Yes, yes. Um, I like where you just mentioned, you are here to, or being able to get that information broken down so that it's digestible by, multiple populations of people. I think that we do a really good job of doing that. And then B, using community to do so.
Hmm.
So, being able to have parts in creating an abstract and then it getting accepted, and then what do you do with that? How do you create? Oh, you have to create a whole poster, and then being able to be there to present the poster. I think that experience is like no other. Um, then I wanted to talk about a little bit about U equals you, because you just said about not just STIs, not just HIV, and then where U equals you kind of plays into that conversation for myself. We get so used to going to the doctor just to make sure that we are still undetectable or have reached an undetectable status, and to check on our T
Hmm.
cells and how many of those count. Like, are those only things that we should be considering when we go to the doctor? There are so many other there are so many other facets of being a human than, just those things. And an HIV status, having a positive HIV status kind of sometimes can put you in a situation where you have to advocate for things that
Hmm.
are important to you. And sex and pleasure happens to be something that is important to me. So when I've had a few experiences where, maybe I felt like that conversation should have come up, and I let the provider know in that moment, yo, I think this conversation should have came up. If I'm coming to the OBGYN and I'm getting my IUD looked at, then why are conversations not coming up there about anything? Like, clearly I'm
Yeah.
having sex because I'm reaching out to you to prevent pregnancy. So I feel like those are such great opportunities to bring in the conversation of sex, pleasure, HIV prevention, strategies, tools for my partner. Like, but none of that happened. I
Hmm.
just walked out of there with, my IUD and whatever.
Well, one, thank you for getting your IUD, because it could have went left and they could have said, not even touching anything related to anything on your body because you're positive, because that was something that happened a long time ago. And even in some places, people won't even give you the birth control that you are requesting that you can get. So just saying yay for that. That's one. And then also, and yay for you saying that that's what I need. That's what I want, which is, I think, an important part. You've one recognizing that there's a service that I want, and then I'm actually going to get up and I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to go receive that. That in itself is just it's a big step that most women, most people don't do. How many times have we said, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna go do this, and we don't do it at all? So just to say, I'm gonna go to the doctor, I'm gonna find a doctor, I'm gonna go to the doctor, and I'm gonna get this IUD, that's a huge step. Now the next step is having that conversation, and it's hard. Even I'll say for me, somebody who is sex positive and screams from the mountaintop. Yesterday I wore a different hoodie that was that was more outlandish than this one, and but it brought up a conversation. And I think that there's some days when I go to the doctor, I don't want to talk. I really just want to hear, this is what it is. I want to go. But I'm also that part of me that teaches this, that is in this field. When I don't hear specific questions, I am the one. All right, so my sex life is great, or it's not. I'm not having sex. Okay, Kim. And then it's like, shouldn't you ask? Hey, so maybe we should start. You asked me about my career. Let me tell you what I'm doing now. Like me and my doctor were cool. I love my chef's kiss. Love my doctor. I don't really have that problem with her. But told something to me. She said something to me like about a year ago, when it's almost been a year. Jesus, right before I started going to the conference. Let's talk about sex, and she was like, "It's hard to initiate these conversations when most people are not open." And like, what do you ask? So even though I wasn't in the mood to have an educational moment, and I just really wanted to get my care and get out because it was a long walk to my car and I was tired, it was still me giving her suggestions. So I think us having these little tools in our toolbox that we have to just sprout out, but then also them using that and practicing how we want them to look at. They want us to come and be forthcoming with information, and you should be studying my chart and asking these questions as well. So I think it's a twofold situation where we both have to have that kind of responsibility of forthcoming with the information of like, I don't enjoy sex. And it's important because that affects me with me being HIV positive. It affects my mental health because I used to enjoy sex. This isn't me. I'm just saying as an example because I enjoy sex. But like, but that could be somebody else's reality is I'm not enjoying it. But since I've noticed in the last few months, you know, it hurts when this happens, or I don't feel as aroused as I used to. Like, what could that be? So, being able to recognize that, I actually like my doctor and I'm comfortable to have that conversation, that's half the battle. And I think a lot of us, if you're not in care, that's a factor. All those social determinants that,
It goes again.
yeah, social determinants, that's a part of our life that plays a big factor. And also, I think Ebony said it or somebody else said it about they women are demonized for wanting to talk about having sex, or just how history period puts us like portrays us women, black women, when it comes to sex, where it's in society where sex and pleasure is something that we should not be discussing because it's not about us. It's about, like you said, our partners. It's about satisfying them. So when it comes to us, it's like, oh, let me get my good old toy. Let me get these good old fingers. Let me do what I got to do, because that act is not really something that we talk about what we should want or what we should feel like. And that goes back in like slavery times, even before that, or when we are talking about sex, we are labeled as over sexualized. So why would we want to talk about that? Like, nobody wants to really have that conversation until you need to have that conversation. And by that time, sometimes it's too late.
Yeah, thanks for that. In this comment, I've only experienced questions about sex on intake forms, but never an active conversation with my provider. My
Mm.
therapist asked though, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I think no, actually, my provider bringing up sex and pleasure because she used to have this plush vagina. That's what it's called.
Ooh, the plushies.
The whole joint. Yeah, and so it had all the parts of see, I don't even know all the names, and I'm 35 with 2 kids. So I can only imagine, how many other people can share that with me. But she would show, and I just broke down crying in the office one day, and this is my ID doctor. I'm like, I hate my vagina. I hate my
Mhm.
vagina. And I, at the moment, I couldn't understand how she related it to me needing therapy. But soon
Mm.
after, I was, enrolled with a therapist because, the HIV diagnosis for me, because sex is how I contracted it. It felt
Mhm.
like it felt a certain type of way. Like my vagina has. it has let me down. It has betrayed me. This allowed me, and so going to therapy and beginning to talk some of those things out was definitely helpful because I hadn't realized how much HIV impacted me as a woman and my wants and my desires and how I was going about, achieving those things. And that was a day for me that I was able to wake up a little bit today. Cause sex and pleasure, like it can be pleasurable, and some of us, the introduction to sex, like the first time, I think this was a topic that came up during one of our presentations, but how sometimes that first could have been so traumatic, whether
Yeah,
it was voluntary or not, um, that you pleasure, like, I don't even want to do that again. But
yeah.
everything in society tells you that you're supposed to be doing it and it's supposed to be good. But those aren't my experiences. Like, yo, what is wrong with me?
But what is good for you? And I think again, have taken that. We didn't even take time to go get our nails done or just chill. So then to figure out what does what feels good to me feels like at times like taking me out of my job. At times it's like what's good for me. What I just want to like it's not doesn't compute sometimes, and other times it's like nah, I want to get my nut too. Like I want to feel tingly. I want extra lube. I want double penetrate. I want that. Like I want to feel that. And it's okay to feel that. And I want to talk about it in a space that doesn't condemn me for wanting these things. I want to have a conversation like this or with more women where we're all talking about it's okay that I label myself as a hoe. And I say hoe, not in the HOE, but the hoe with Jasmine Sullivan hoe, where we're all talking about I'm married and I'm a hoe with my husband. Like we don't have these conversations. This isn't something that is brought up, that is normalized. It's not a conversation of if I look good, I feel good. But if I look good, I feel good, I want to do more. So like, and it's not for that person, it's not for my partner, it's for me. And the moment that we start saying that more, maybe that'll start changing the narrative of what sex and pleasure looks like, especially when it comes to HIV, because HIV is icky. No, ugh,
Mhm.
nobody wants to talk about HIV. Then you put sex in HIV, of course it's going to be demonized, especially when, like for me, that's not my experience. I wasn't somebody who contracted HIV through sex. Well, technically, my mama had sex, and then gave birth to me. So for me, my trouble was, I guess, my anxiety or the, I guess I would say the dark cloud for me or my hesitation more came for childbirth because I was born with HIV. So I guess that's the trigger for me. Um, but sex wise, I was more so of terrified of passing it on to my partner, who's not my husband, because it's I would never want to be that person or like on the end to be the one that's giving it to somebody. But then he was more knowledgeable about HIV than I was at that time. And it's something that again, even when you're positive, if you're not actively going to find out what's in your body, when the doctor talks about T cells and viral load, that sounds like Charlie Brown. T cells, viral load, like what is that? So you're not even taking that because now you just know that there's something different inside your head, inside your body that other people are scared of. So now you want now sex. It's like that's not even a factor. I'm trying to get my meds. That's without my insurance is what $5,000.
Been out the hard way. So look, you saying all of that. So I'm thinking you equals you again. Because it was a comment. We got this conversation so great and robust. You equals you. Did that change the conversation? Did around like sex and pleasure for you? Did that help at all? Has that helped any of those conversations come up with providers, your partners? That.
So I would say U equals U. So here's something that most people know, most people don't know. When U equals U came out, we was already practicing that. A lot of us in the field, especially the teenagers, because like I'll speak for me and my friends. Growing up in the field, growing up positive, and I live in New York, so I can say that my access to care, my access to knowledge, me working in the field already at 15, and that connection I had with different providers, I got a lot of information. And I was actively reaching and getting information, but I had a really cool um, pediatrician. Like, I love him hands down. If I can move to Honduras, I would be with him, even though he's retired, because that's how much I love my pediatric doctor, and who's retired in Honduras, and I should not know that, but that's what he is. That's how connected I was. They had to kick me out, but he was somebody who broke everything down, not just to me, but also to my husband, and explained that as long as I'm what they call now an elite controller, before it was a non-progressor. So my HIV is something, for those who don't know what that is I have a slow progressing HIV. It doesn't mutate as fast. I got on medication for the first time without, minus my pregnancy, at the age of 30 by choice, not because my body said, I hate you. It was like, I was like, let me get on, let me see what happens, because there's no research on people who are born positive long term. So I just did that for myself. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, he explained to me that as long as everybody else like takes their medicine, the risk of us giving it to them would be it's low. And then for me, it's even lower because I'm a female. Talking, breaking down like what the vagina looks like, you know, what it looks like if I was to pass it on. Also knowing that I was naturally undetectable for years. So what that would look like, it's hard. It would be really, really hard to pass that on to my husband at that time, who was my boyfriend. He's the only person I've been with, so it's only one person. So it's easy to just say that one person. And then like he broke it down to me, and then my husband did some research, and then I did research, and then when U equals U was official, um, I was on meds, and then I was still nervous. So my husband, he got on meds. So it's not even just undetectable equals untransmittable. Now he's on PrEP. So we have me on meds, him on PrEP. That's the extra on the extra on the extra of the extra. We just extra over here. Because it's like, oh, there's a 1%, 2% chance. Nah, we don't like that odds. Mm-mm. Nah, we need 1,000%. So that's where we at. We working on 1,000% over here, um, which it don't need to be, but it's just something that we chose to do. So it's a big impact in our relationship, but it's also something that was an option that necessarily wasn't promoted years ago. It was kind of like you had to hear it through the grapevine, but like we knew you took your meds, you good, you undetectable, you good. So now it's just more, it's solidified, I would say, that is confirmed of something we already knew.
I love that. Community does, we do be finding out stuff. We just need to research to back it up.
That's it.
So,
We know, and then we tell each other like, what would be the alternative? And I even think about, yeah, we're talking about sex and pleasure and prep and U equals U, but that's a big impact even on your side when it comes to breastfeeding. Like that's a fight that we're still fighting. Or even just right now with having unprotected sex with U equals U. Most most doctors understand it, but even still talking about it makes them uncomfortable because it's this big thing in the room, HIV. A lot of people like me, I guess I'm an old head, but I'm young, who's had it for so long, we've seen what it looked like in 1995, 1996, early 2000, and now we're 40 years in and we see the before and after, and a lot of us are still, including providers, still going off that fear of what was before to where we are now. So I think that's a big factor of how people move and how people see and how where stigma plays a part, because we've seen the before and now we're in the after.
well, me, I'm almost 15 years in, and I like unprotected sex a
Oh yeah,
lot.
me too.
And Eliane says that good sex reduces stress, which
Sure
means
does.
great for mental health. But how do we enjoy sex in a world full of HIV stigma and U equals U is unknown publicly? Yeah, we're working on that right now. I want to ask that everyone would take a moment to please fill out our evaluation today. It's a quick survey, 3 minutes tops. You could be done quicker than that, but we just want to get some feedback. Our episodes and our discussions are what we want to talk about. Are these things that we really want to delve into and hear? So please give us that feedback so we can continue to provide great programming for, our community. It was a great point. I wanted to Rainisha. It was a woman in the comments. She says that she was recently diagnosed. And this is hard. And please, please make sure that you get in touch with someone if someone hasn't reached out yet. Please, reach out so that we can get you, that support of this sisterhood. It was something else that Ebony had mentioned was how was this conversation? How were we, going to unpack this conversation with older women who are living with HIV?
Hmm.
And Bridget said this: folks don't like to look at older people as still being vibrant and viable. Older women have sex. We need to talk about it. I remember when I was younger, I couldn't imagine thinking about my mom having sex. Like that was the most disgusting. Like the day that it clicked in my head that in
Hmm.
order for them to have 3 children, they had to have sex 3 different times. I was disgusted. And, and now I'm the mom. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna get older and I don't see these desires or wants ever going away. And watching older women, that are older than me navigate that now,
Hmm.
um, I can only imagine because of the stigma that comes with not only living with HIV, but then as aging as a woman, period. Like, and I can't imagine. I can't imagine. Do you ever get any chances to talk to older people who about sex? And
Yeah.
what are those conversations like?
So I think for me, I feel like it's a glimpse into when I get older than what I am. So like right now, first off, my son called me a boomer, and I said the disrespect that I'm only 36. How dare you, young child? Like you can get out. What is this? Like when did it come out? Whoa. Um, but yeah, I've had conversations with older women, and I'm like older than 50, like 60, 70, and just talking about what the best types of lube to use for you. Because after a while, you getting wet is could be a struggle during menopause. So, what does that look like when our sex drive is going up, hits our peak when we're in our 40s and 50s, and then for men, it declines as they're getting older, and then combating what that looks like, or talking like you can still contract an STI. Just because we pass menopause does not mean that we cannot get anything. Like you can still get something. So that's still a conversation. I don't know what happens. It's like you get older and it's like, no, I'm good. I can get no. HIV is actually really high and prevalent in elder communities, but nobody wants to talk about that. Yeah, nobody wants to talk about that. And I think that if we have these conversations with, first off, I'm a conundrum, I guess I would say. I'm somebody who believes that you need to start having these conversations with little kids, but it shouldn't look like penis into vagina. Like it's steps when it comes to sex education. So talking about consent, talking about good consent looks like allowing somebody in your space and not wanting somebody in your space, and talking about what good touch, bad touch looks like, but then also just going up and moving up with that as we get older, and then still continuing the conversation in the elder community or people over 50, because even then it's, or then talking about elder abuse or talking about what that looks like, elder sexual abuse, and how what that looks like. And I don't think, or people don't talk about those things, and we don't highlight that enough. So we might talk about people having sex, but we don't talk about ages. We don't talk about the struggles when it comes to those ages. We don't talk about just even like your proximity to services and what that looks like and how that affects you having sex, or even just I'm big on lube. Like you trying to use lube for different acts, or using condoms, or the different brands of condoms, or you know, talking to your children is hard enough, but then also still having, now we're the parents that has to parent our parents. So it's even that conversation needs to continue. It's uncomfortable, but it needs to get done. So I think that's what I'm here for. For me, I would say is my job is not just to talk to my child or people that's younger, or talking to people that's my age, but that's what I'm doing is opening up these conversations even for work, not if you work in a corporate, but that's also sexual harassment, which is also a part of sexual health as well. It's so sexual health is not just one size fits all conversation. It's so big and vast and broad that it really is put your hand in a cup and then pick a topic, and then we could talk about it kind of situation when it comes to sex and sexual pleasure.
They tripping me out in the comments. You see,
I'm
Teresa said
reading.
almost 50 and these hormones are fire, feeling like a teenager. Bridget was like, desire, want, need. It's a struggle, but I'm not giving up. Folks swear 50 or 60 is old, and it's not.
It's
I
not.
used to think 27 was old.
I thought 25 was old. And then now I'm about to be 37, and I'm like, oh, I'm almost 40. Oh, the moment they stopped carding me, I was like, you don't want my card? How dare you? Felt
um,
insulted.
and then Teresa also said that if we're not talking to our children, someone is, and they're probably being misinformed. So I definitely appreciate your approach to that. Yes. Um,
I feel bad for my son.
they said, "What's wrong with being 40?"
Nothing's wrong with being 40. It's just okay. So I'll tell y'all this, right? For me, I didn't think that I would reach 16, right? No, it's not wrong with being 40. I didn't think I was gonna reach 16. And then to reach 20 was like, oh, I made it. Because like for a lot of us, we heard so much that you're not gonna make it. Like be happy that you're here. And that was a big narrative from different people that I've heard, is just be happy that you're still here. Um, and then to reach 30 and to say, having that 30 life crisis where most of us is like, am I where I'm supposed to be at? Am I doing what I should be? And then now you're 35 and you're like, I think I got the hang of this. So now to unlock level 40, and I'm almost there, and it's a level like a game, because I think the whole world is a game. But to unlock stage 40, I think is going to be amazing for me. I'm excited to get there, but it's so overwhelming because it's like, what am I walking into? So I think that's the scary part. So it's not so much of like, oh my God, 40, but like, oh my God, 40. That's crazy.
Because I could remember 20 years ago now. 20 years ago, I was, whoa. So, yeah, and just seeing the evolution of like this womanhood, and then know that, like, I'm still Cece, I'm still Ciarra, and I'm still going to have these things. I'm not giving up neither, Bridget. Darn it. Um,
You
if,
still gotta do that when you're married, though. Like, it's not. I know, like, it's different because
I don't want to be married. What's the, sorry, keep, but keep going. That was a great point.
I got thrown off. But yeah, I think it's a different fight. It's a different struggle when you're married. Um,
Sorry.
it's the way my inside said, "Girl." Sometimes me too.
Sound like a whole nother
It's a
hour.
whole different. That's a whole. It's a whole different hour. We ain't got that much time. That should be the next title. Whew. Anyway, right. So yeah, but being married is a, you still gotta figure, first off, I'll speak on me. I've been with my husband for almost 20 years. We've together. So, um, the ups and downs of you as an individual trying to figure out what you like, what you want. And I've been with him since I was 16. So at 16, I thought I knew something, but I really didn't. Um, to now at 36, understanding what I like more, but then still trying to explore that and understand that. As your body changes, like my knee didn't hurt at 16, but it hurts now, or my back wasn't hurting at 20. Now my back is starting to hurt. Like it's your body is doing different things than what it was before. And as it's doing different things for me, it's doing different things for him. And then trying to figure what that looks like. And then also having a teenager and then trying to have sex. What that looks like, working and trying to have sex, but then also keep that spark. But then also sometimes we both recognize, all right, the kid's not here for a week. Sex sounds nice, but I kind of just want to go to sleep. Like that, like it's understanding that at times. So wait until 40, baby. Y'all getting me hype about 40. I
Me,
might have to have a 40th birthday party.
yes, yes.
But married people get, it's a different type of navigation, and it's also a different type of treatment that providers give you as well. Because I also, when I was breaking that down to my old doctor, he was like, why don't you want to have sex with your husband? You should be having sex with your husband. And I'm like, dude, I'm in full time school with a full time job with a toddler. Who's thinking about sex? I'm thinking about sleep. I'm thinking about, do I have enough money to buy Chinese food because I don't feel like cooking? So even that conversation looks different for a lot of people who's in committed relationships or marriages or that's not single.
So we're going to conclude with this last comment. It was when Krista posted a moment ago. It feels normal to talk about sex positivity and pleasure in the MSM community. And that's why I'm extremely grateful for such a powerful conversation like this one, you know. Thank you so much for sharing so much of those intricacies when just being in a relationship, a sexual relationship, a romantic one, a marriage, like all of those different dynamics can impact and affect how we are feeling the desire to want to have sex and feeling the
Mm.
desire to be pleasured and all of those different things in our community. In our community. Um, Eliane, she says, "In heart, I am 25 forever, but when my body tells me keep calm, you are old lady. I respect."
I love these comments.
This has been such a great conversation, interactive. Thank you so much for giving your input, comments, keeping this conversation going. As I asked a little earlier, the evaluation link is in the comments. Please take a moment to fill that out so that we can keep these conversations going. This has been a pleasure, no pun intended, Kim, to have you here today to talk sex, HIV, pleasure, women, and all of what we've been doing with She Her Day. Thank you, everyone. So join us again next month for another episode, another live stream talking, women's and women's issues stuff. So thank y'all. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful